as intuitively commanded by the Lord within. From tomorrow, Mahashivaratri day, we are commencing on a maybe a year-long yagna, and this yagna is Ashtavakra Gita, one verse a day. The verse followed by a brief talk on the verse, a verse a day yagna. The number of verses are close to 300, so maybe the whole year will be this non-stop yagna as commanded by divinity within. Such an intuition has never come till now for the first time. A brief introduction on Ashtavakra Gita. Once upon a time, there was a student of the scriptures who could not support his family. He would work hard all day, every day, and then read aloud the holy language of sacred verses late into the night. His wife, expecting a child, would sit beside him in the dim room, listening as her husband chanted the ancient words. One late night, in her 8th month, a voice from inside her belly said to the father, "Sir, please be attentive. You are mispronouncing this verse." Tired and short-tempered, without thinking why he would feel so enraged at being corrected by an unborn child, the father cursed the voice, and because the father had built up merit, his curse took hold. The child was born deformed, with 8 crooks in his body. The child was called Ashtavakra, a name which means 8 bends. Everyone who saw him laughed in derision. That crippled child was an enlightened master who took birth in his family to reveal in simple words the essence of mystical experience. Janaka, king of the known world, father of the bride of God Sita, daughter of earth, that very King Janaka became this crippled boy's disciple. The book based on that event is called The Song of the Eightfold Cripple or Ashtavakra Gita. Ashtavakra was not keen on accepting students, and so he had very few as his disciples. When King Janaka came to hear of the wisdom of the crippled child, he approached the boy as a humble student. The boy accepted the king instantly as his disciple. This caused some talk in the circle. Ah, Ashtavakra does not have favorites after all, does have favorites after all. He accepted the king without any of the trials. He had all of us face. This grumbling became a quiet force, and Ashtavakra knew of it. One day the king was late, and so Ashtavakra delayed his discourse. The moment the king arrived, Ashtavakra spoke. This day I have had a vision. The capital city will erupt in terrible fires and earthquakes. All there will die. Those who have loved ones or valuables there must hurry now if they wish to save anything. All the other so-called seekers or monks left. As the dust settled, only the boy and the king were sitting. Ashtavakra said softly, Great king, is there nothing you would say? Janaka replied, My lord, you are my only treasure. The Guru nodded and softly said, Well, then, if I am indeed your treasure, mount your horse now and go and gather my students back to me. Tell them I have been mistaken. The capital city is in no danger. Take your horse and go. The king went, and as he swung up over the saddle, realization dawned in his mind. He swallowed, looked about him at this new earth, heard new birds singing for the first time, and then looked upon his master at his feet. The two looked at one another, and then the king left to find other students. Once back, the other students grumbled at being sent about here and there on foolish errands. One or two, however, did soon understand why the master had chosen the king as a student in his own way. This is what was said on that day, as all sat about and heard these words of nectarine wisdom. Few lines from Chinmaya's introduction on this sacred verse Ashtavakra Gita. Ashtavakra Gita does not show any inclination to accept a personal God as we find in the Bhagavad Gita. In this sense, thoughts of Ashtavakra are more faithful to the major Upanishads and their monistic idealism. To all advanced students of meditation, Ashtavakra Gita directly points out the way and the goal. Those who have not had the early groundings in meditation and have not experienced the inner silence of meditation, to them this Gita is a mute instrument. The final spiritual experience in Ashtavakra Gita arises to profound ruptures of vision and insight and culminates in the sovereign unity of the self that dissolves all duality, such as the knower, knowledge, and knowing. In fact, the deeper essence of this Ashtavakra Gita cannot be explained in words, but is to be experienced in the dynamic silence of one's own deepest meditation. Unquote. In Advaita Vedanta, Ashtavakra Gita can be considered as the final and the ultimate treatise. Each verse in these 20 chapters in this Gita, they are in themselves worth meditating very intensely. Upanishads are all about one single truth, the self. But Upanishads, most of them are indeed very mystical, and it takes great efforts to decipher the deeper meaning of Upanishad. verses before getting into contemplation on the verses. For example, when the student asks the master in Kenopanishad, driven by what power the eyes see, the ears hear, etc., instead of giving the direct answer, the master says it is the ear of the ear, eye of the eye, mind of the mind, prana of the prana. So one has to really first make great efforts to even know what the master is saying, and then the contemplation, meditation, absorption, etc. would start. Whereas Ashtavakra Gita verses give the truth directly with no mystery. For a sadhaka to take up this direct meditative verses, the sadhaka should have contemplated on Bhagavad Gita verses, all Adi Shankara's Vedanta treatises, 10 major Upanishads, so that the sadhaka is qualified to pick up Ashtavakra Gita verses and get straight away into deepest contemplation, Nididhyasana. This treatise is the final one to be taken up in Vedanta for Nididhyasana. He doesn't know how many times he has gone through this sacred treatise right from 2011, 2012. He has no count of how many times. While in India in 2021, he went through all the verses from chapter 1, first verse, from the chapter 20 up to the chapter 20, last verse. And sometimes he would be stilled in one verse for 2 or 3 days, full from the dawn to dusk. While walking, while seated in the Bhiwadi temple in the morning and the evening, all through the day and till late night, he would be on that single verse. And thus he completed all the verses and got each time for in each verse he got into an ecstasy beyond, far beyond expression. Still, even now, every time he opens this book and goes through each verse, it is like the new joy experienced for the very first time. It is like the first ever romance with the most profound treatise in Advaita Vedanta. So, as he started this introduction, efforts with and only with God's grace would be to give talk on one verse a day, starting from tomorrow, the Mahashivaratri day 2023. The talk would be brief, directly hitting the essence of the verse without much elaboration, without much of quoting from Upanishads or other treatises. Most part of the talk would flow directly from within, with no deliberation, with no intellectual thinking whatsoever. Wherever required, a brief portion of Chinmaya's commentary on the verses would be taken up in the talk. Wherever it is found important and necessary for the sadhakas to get the same, very brief part. let God Almighty bless this Ashtavakra Gita Yagna starting from tomorrow. And may God bless us to perform this Yagna daily without interruption. There are some verses as the talks on Ashtavakra Gita verses started from 2012 itself, but up to 2018 19, most of them were in the audio format, recorded or not recorded, and lying somewhere else. But from the time the YouTube channel has been started, from the time Ashtavakra Gita talks have started, have been uploaded in the YouTube channel, it may be observed that there are some verses, maybe it doesn't have the number, maybe 20, 25, 30 verses, on which detailed talk has been given earlier and uploaded in the YouTube channel. In even for all those verses, the daily yajna talk would continue, brief talk. However, whenever we approach a verse for which earlier talk has been given, for example, chapter 1, verse 12, wherever there is a reference of an earlier talk uploaded in the channel, the link would be shared of that talk in the appropriate forum for mumukshu sadhakas to listen if they wish to, even if there is one such sadhaka. To conclude, he confirms he is not giving anything to anyone through this yajna. He is not performing anything in a Guru Shishya Parampara for any sadhakas. It is his joy, infinite, which is being expressed through some words, even while it is known that there are possibly no words found in any finite language to express that joy of any of the verses in this sacred Gita. Still, whatever God gives to him, that shall be poured. So, only difference is that such expressions, while seated in Bhiwadi temple, the expressions would be, the experience would be deep within. Now, with the intuitive command received from the Almighty, such experiences would flow as some words. That's it. It is his sharing of his joy, infinite, boundless, with no one. The expressions are coming out and the recorder records it. That's it. The, it has with that it finds its fulfillment. So he is not doing anything while the talks are getting uploaded for the next 285 or 300 days whatsoever. So how anyone at all is going to listen to these talks, or anyone at all is going to get into intense absorption while listening to these talks, is between that anyone or no one and God. He has no role in this whatsoever. So the yajna, poured and performed in silence, starts from tomorrow. Hari Om Tat Sat.